How's it going, everybody? I'm Jason Langlois, Executive Director here at Manship Theatre, which is in the Shaw Center. It would be nice to see you pop up there, but that's okay. That's one of the things you love about Baton Rouge, downtown Baton Rouge, but we'll take Shaw Center. I just wanted to come out and say hi and thank y'all. I want to thank Forum 225 and Braff and Sasaki for reaching out to us to host this event. You are sitting in one of the key components of Plan Baton Rouge III, and that is the Shaw Center and Manship Theatre. So now we're in our 20th year. So to give y'all some context as y'all get into this discussion, this was what can happen from these discussions and what did happen from these discussions. Something that is a very sustainable, economically impactful performing arts center. So again, I want to thank y'all, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw it to your panel leader, Adam Chapman. Enjoy, y'all.
All right. Hey everybody, good evening. I'm Adam Chapman, President of Forum 225. Thank you for being with us here tonight for this special Plan BR3 event. We're very excited to see a room full of energy, ideas, and people who are interested in and care about Baton Rouge. Forum 225 is a nonprofit led by young professionals for young professionals. Our mission is about empowering young leaders, creating opportunities to connect, and driving real lasting change in the community. Through socials, leadership, service projects, professional development, and events like this, our goal is to build a better Baton Rouge in which young people want to live, work, and stay. Before we go on, a few quick questions. Do we have any elected officials in the room? Please stand up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. By show of hands, how many of you are current Forum 225 members? All right, thank you very much. How about former Forum 225 members? Okay, thank you so much. We're very proud of our history at Forum 225, so thank you for being a part of it. We've been around for more than 30 years, and in that time we've seen so many young professionals come through, people who got involved early in their careers, built relationships, stepped into leadership roles, and then went on to shape Baton Rouge in big ways. So whether it's in government, nonprofits, business, or the arts, our alumni are everywhere, including on this stage tonight. This history matters because everybody who joins this organization becomes part of something bigger than just monthly events or volunteer hours. You're stepping into a network of people who care deeply about this city and are committed to making it better. Not just now, but for the next generation as well. And if you haven't joined yet, feel free to visit the table outside where we will gladly take your cash, check, credit card, or cryptocurrency for your membership payment. We're here tonight to be part of a bigger conversation about what kind of city we want to live in. And if you have been paying attention lately, talent retention is a very hot topic these days. And that's something that Forum 225 wants to be, that we want to really lean into. Consider that talent retention is not just about job opportunities, it's about how it feels to live here. It's about quality of life and quality of place. If Baton Rouge is a city where people feel connected and where they feel like they belong, then we're going to keep our best and brightest right here at home. So we're grateful to be a part of this process, and we hope that you'll keep showing up and speaking up as the vision for our city continues to take shape. One more thing to note, that this is a casual and comfortable event, and we are all about spreading the word, so please take pictures and videos, post on your social medias, let folks know that you're here and you're participating tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to Eric Dexter.
Thank you, Adam. My name is Eric Dexter. I'm the Vice President of Civic Leadership Initiatives at the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, and we have the opportunity of helping to lead this project on behalf of many of our project partners. And I have to turn around a little bit here to put the screen up here, but many of these project partners that you see on the screen here, including the City Parish of Baton Rouge, the Downtown Development District, Visit Baton Rouge, the Baton Rouge Area Chamber, and other generous donors that you see on the screen. Before I go to the next slide, I just also, as part of introducing myself, just want to give you a little bit of an insight of like a full circle moment this is for me. I moved to Baton Rouge 20 years ago, around this month. I'm from Alexandria, Louisiana. I went to school at Northwestern State University in Natchitoches, Louisiana, and I jetted to South Louisiana as soon as I could. So I packed my bags, and I was probably down here in June or July of 2005 as this Shaw Center, as Jason said earlier, was being constructed and opening to the public. And so for me to be sitting on stage here to talk about a third version of this is really, again, a true full circle moment. I'm also a long-term Forum 225, back when it was still Forum 35 member. I joined the organization probably 2011 or so, became a co-chair of a committee, and then just a few years after that was on the board and became president. And I got a chance to serve as president for a couple of years, and it was a great opportunity to lead this organization. That was really my introduction into anything civic leadership or civic engagement into the city. And when I joined Forum, I met folks like Rachel DiResto and Lou Thomas at the Center for Planning Excellence, and the John Davies and John Spains of the world of the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. And these were key figures and trailblazers to me that I looked up to understand of how things were moving and working around the city. And I still looked at them as that. And so, again, for me to be here today playing somewhat of a leadership role throughout this process is one of the great joys of my young professional life thus far. Talk a little bit more about what you can do as a member and advocate and cheerleader and champion for this process. This is a people-driven, people-led process for Plan Baton Rouge III, as it was for Plans 1 and 2. The best way that you can do this is by being an advocate, being a microphone, being a mouthpiece for this plan. Last night, we had, hundreds of folks that attended a community event right across the street at the old state capitol, and it was just a wonderful experience. And I'm hoping that if you were there last night, or you talked to some of your friends and neighbors, they started to see some of the reflections of what they've seen some of the previous events that we've done. And so when you can scan that QR code, that'll lead you to the planbatonrouge.com website. On there, we'll have a community survey that is live now that you'll be able to complete, but also be able to share with your network. It'll come back up again. We're about midway through the planning process for Plan Baton Rouge III. We started this in earnest February of this year when we got the Sasaki team here on the ground to do kind of the initial landscape analysis, walking around downtown, driving around the surrounding corridors and connecting corridors to really understand what currently existed, what types of assets existed in downtown Baton Rouge and the surrounding area. Since then, we've been able to take a lot of feedback, as I mentioned before, from the first convening that we've done back in April, and have gotten to this midway point. And what we're starting to see now, and Josh will talk a little about this in a second, of some of these big ideas that are being generated based on your feedback. So if you've seen the boards that are outside the room here, and the big board of downtown that you'll be able to see and put some markers on the board, these are your ideas. And I keep saying NIL, but this should reflect your name, your image, and likeness, because this is what Plan Baton Rouge is about. It's about the entire community, and it should be a direct reflection of the people. These are the boards that you've seen. These are the ones from the previous event that we showed, just like what you'll continue to see, and hopefully as we develop this process, you'll be able to see, again, your ideas reflected in this. This is not something that we hired Josh and his team to come in from Denver and Boston and around the country to show us, hey, this is what everyone else is doing around the country, this is what you should do. What they first started doing is we formed a steering committee, an executive committee, and several focus groups to understand what are the needs and wants and interests of the community. And there's no more important voice in this room or in the city as the young people that are here. Why? Because in 20 and 30 years, well, let's go back a little bit, in 5 to 10 years, in 15 years, many of you will be the folks that are starting the businesses, you'll be the executive directors and the CEOs and vice presidents that are leading many of the organizations and the buildings that occupy downtown Baton Rouge and starting the new businesses and putting on the programming activities and running the festivals. And so that is why your input and your involvement is crucial here today. And lastly, if you came in April, I think this was April 30th or so, when we went through the initial phase of convening over at the LASM, the Louisiana Art and Science Museum, we had over 1,200, I believe 1,200 or so responses to the initial survey, about 120 or so people that used the mapping tool that is on the website. That's really cool. And hundreds of people that showed out through a number of meetings that we did over a 2-day period to provide their feedback and perspectives. And I hope that if you came to that meeting and you were there again last night, you'll start to see those ideas show up almost on like a heat map. And then from there, we'll take those ideas and start to nail down into very specific projects and the strategies that go along with that. So again, I am excited about being here and talking to you a little bit more about tonight, but participate. That's the only thing I can say, is that you have to show up. That was one of my things that I did, and I remember showing up to a rainy event one night. It was called Forum Fever. It was the introduction to Forum 35. It was at the Woman's Club here in downtown Baton Rouge, and the rest was history. Boo Thomas, matter of fact, the founder and initial executive director of CPEX, was the speaker that night. That was the first time I heard. So all this stuff is very fortuitous for me personally, but I think for this organization, it's played an outsized role in the planning of downtown Baton Rouge. And Rachel, I know, will touch on that a little bit in just a second to talk about the legacy of young professionals in the area. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and so happy to be here tonight. I'm Rachel DiResto. I'm a managing director at Emergent Method, but I am a former member of Forum 35, sorry, I have to call it that. My husband and I moved here in 1995, and when I say I was looking for something downtown because I was drawn to that area, it was a ghost town. It really was a ghost town. And it was a time where, if you can imagine, this building did not exist. Many of the state buildings that you see today did not exist. Many of the restaurants and bars and things that you experience today, they weren't here. And so it was a time that I was kind of looking for energy and action. And I heard of this Plan Baton Rouge process, and I actually went and signed up to volunteer at the old state capitol at the sign-in table. I was like, I gotta see what's happening here. This Plan Baton Rouge thing sounds kind of interesting. And at the time, there were some of what I call our forefathers of planning. John Davies, Cordell Hayman, John Spain wasn't involved at the time, but there was a very energetic process starting, and Forum 35 was there at the very beginning. Anyway, I volunteered, and then it became both my profession and my passion. I was hired shortly after with the organization that became Plan Baton Rouge and assigned to implement that first plan. But I want to tell you, it was an exciting moment for me personally, for a lot of the people that I knew my age, to be asked for the first time in a long time, what do you want your downtown to be? What do you want your city to look like? And that created such enthusiasm and engagement. And I went back to get my master's in planning at that time because I thought, this is cool. This is what I want to be a part of for the rest of my life. But I want to say Forum 35 really played an important role in that original Plan Baton Rouge process. It really sparked civic engagement and kind of hope for what downtown could be. And I'm going to go through, I collected some quotes from former members, and I'll go through those. I forgot I had these here. Going up. But just from one of the planners who worked on the plan, who brought the quote that everything connects to everything else. It became just a mantra that we all needed to work together. And I'm going to just leave these up on screen so y'all can read what Forum 35 members and founders of those original planning efforts said about how that plan really shaped and impacted our city. And there was a fundamental philosophy at that time that downtown is for everyone, and it should gather everyone. And it identified areas where public action could spark private investment. And so that's what we're looking at today. I mean, that's what this plan is about too. What are those incremental things that spark that private sector reaction? And just so you know, major projects that came out of that plan. This building, this is incredible. If you can imagine, this was a parking lot. Where you are today, this was a parking lot, an empty parking lot. But there was an old auto hotel, and that was a parking garage. And one of the first planners of that original Plan Baton Rouge II walked up that parking garage circle and said, "This is a backwoods Guggenheim." And at the time, the LSU Museum of Art was about to locate out on Essen Lane, but the founders captured that idea, backwoods Guggenheim, and the planners said, you ought to have the museum locate downtown. It shouldn't be out on Essen Lane, it should be downtown. And with that and with partnerships formed conversations that became a reality. It was shaped over a long period of time. I remember telling my friends, there's going to be this amazing building in that parking lot. And they'd say, no way. It's not going to happen. No, we don't do that kind of thing. And it happened. And here we are today, sitting here today. But not only that, it sparked the interest by the Commissioner of Administration at that time, Mark Drennan, who really was looking at how state buildings that occupied rental spaces across the city ought to be consolidated in a downtown area. And so the Capitol Park plan came about and was also shaped by the planners at that time. And we have at least 6 new state buildings that were built in a very short time for a city of our size. Galvez, Bienville, Claiborne. Yo, these buildings were not there. They were not there. They are young in nature, but they were all built around this idea of good government and dignity and just having a great place for state workers to experience coming downtown. And now, because of that visionary planning, we have 10,000 state workers who come downtown every day. So what a great new market that created for a lot of the businesses that are here. It was also one of the first times, thank you, yeah, keep going on the slides. I forgot that part. They're not as important, but the riverfront as an asset was one of the key themes too, and I know that's a key theme that'll be carried through. We still have so much more to really reap from our riverfront. It is a place we bring our visitors. It's a place that we have as our unique identity. So that you're going to see as a theme that carries through. But the new residential units, the revitalization of the Hilton Hotel, the Main Street Market, I mean, you can think of all the places you love to go these days. That all came about from very intentional planning and a hell of a lot of work. And so you're going to see ideas, you're going to see concepts tonight, and you're going to say, oh, I don't think that'll ever work here. It will work if you get involved. It will work if you champion these ideas. It'll work if you tell your elected officials this is important and this is something I want to see, because that's how it comes about. So back to Forum 35's role. I mean, again, it was really the entrepreneurial and civic engagement that Forum 35 brought. And they started taking on projects, programming events like Reindeer Run in downtown Baton Rouge, a beloved event around Christmas time that brought thousands of people, families downtown. And Forum 35 kind of pulled that off on a shoestring budget. Really didn't get the proper event regulatory permits for the first event. I remember it was really like a can-do attitude. Let's just go do this. Another huge event, Art Melt, was started at that time, just in an empty space, an empty building, which Blend now occupies. And we brought a bunch of art and hung it on the walls and said, y'all come. And they did. And for the next 5 to 6 years, that event grew to attract thousands of people, became a juried art show. And Forum 35 member John Jackson started that event. And a few of us just helped along the way. Keep going, I think. Oh, we're the last one. And then, of course, you see even Todd Graves. I mean, we have these influential entrepreneurs that came, from Baton Rouge and have gone on to do great things or created amazing businesses here in Baton Rouge. And during that time, they really helped shape the downtown plan. So I just wanted you to kind of hear from some of them directly what it meant at that time. And then just so you understand, like, you really can make a difference. You really can have a voice. And even if you just take on one little thing to champion or one little thing to follow through, it can make a huge difference. Plan Baton Rouge II came about, and again, Forum 225 played a great role in just creating volunteer activities around that, speaker series around that. Plan Baton Rouge II was focused on downtown being green and active and connected, and you saw the Roar Plaza come about. You saw a lot more residential units being built, which then in turn could support a grocery store. So downtown became a lot more livable. Downtown became a lot more beautiful too, with a lot more of the fountains that came around the old state capitol. So again, I'm saying, like, it can be done. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of fortitude, it takes a lot of partnerships, And I think it's you in this room who are going to carry this plan forward. So I really invite you to embrace it, and whatever exciting idea you see or have, bring it forward and carry it through, and you're going to have a great impact. So we'll talk more about Plan Baton Rouge 1 and 2, but I'm so happy to be here tonight to bring some of that spirit to this event.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Brooks. I am a principal and partner at a design firm called Sasaki. I'm based out of Denver, but we have offices around the country. What's really exciting is I actually grew up in Baton Rouge, moved away a long time ago, but I'm incredibly excited and humbled to be back here leading this project. I work across the country on downtown planning efforts in particular and urban revitalization work. And so it's incredibly exciting to come back to my hometown and have the opportunity to lead Plan Baton Rouge III. As Rachel said, I mean, the work that happened with Plan Baton Rouge 1 and 2 is truly remarkable. And cities tend to sort of forget, you know, the recent past and the work that was done to get them to a place where they are today. And I think this is a great opportunity in the city's history to sort of think, like, what is the future? So much of our work in this plan, and really all of my work around the country, is about creating the proper ecosystem for the things to happen. You know, there's only so much that private industry can do, there's only so much that government can do, but when they come together and work with a collective vision, a lot can happen. And so this plan is intentionally very broad, it's very diverse, it has a lot of ideas in it, because each one of those ideas are part of the broader sort of feedback loop that ultimately makes downtowns and cities successful. And it didn't click, not the right slide. And you know, our work really on this plan is centered around setting up the fundamentals of what makes a thriving retail and food and beverage environment, what makes people want to live downtown, what then attracts people to want to come and work in an office, and ultimately for a company to say, hey, I want my office to be down there. What makes thriving arts and cultural scenes happen, and how does a public realm stitch all of that together? And really focusing on the intersectionality between these aspects is what a plan like this can really do to ensure that each individual implementer, and I'm going to come back to that point in a little bit, because each individual group, your individual selves, organizations, government agencies, all have a role in implementing this broader vision. It's all about how they work together. The downtown plan, I'm going to give a very, very brief overview. The boards outside and the big map can kind of give you a little bit more detail, but we're really focused on sort of 5 overarching guiding principles. Establishing market diversity, creating neighborhood places, establishing a new front porch to the river, creating a cultural corridor, and establishing clear connections. And each one of those is part of that sort of thriving ecosystem that I just walked through. The first guiding principle is really centered around the fact that downtown is part of a broader ecosystem within Baton Rouge metropolitan area. I mean, there are lots of economic centers around the city, and we don't want to create a downtown that necessarily competes, but rather one that works in concert with the other areas in the city. And so this plan will focus on really trying to identify what are the sort of missing economic anchors within downtown. How can we attract new economic anchors into the city, and ultimately sort of kickstarting that sort of excitement. And through this plan, we'll be looking for things like potential partnerships with LSU, establishing new places for tourism, creating sort of authentic Baton Rouge experiences that ultimately, I think, as Rachel said, sort of kickstart the idea that, you know, a private developer may say, hey, I want to now develop in downtown Baton Rouge. The next guiding principle is this idea of neighborhood places. And when you look around downtown, there's also actually a couple of different very unique neighborhoods. And creating a plan has to sort of work with each one of those individual places. And so this plan really works to establish a series of nodes around the downtown environment, so that somebody who says, hey, I want to live in Spanish Town, or hey, I want to live in Beauregard Town, has that sort of corner plaza or that corner park, has a corner coffee shop to call their own. So that downtown isn't just for driving in, parking in a garage, going to one event, getting back in your car and driving away, but rather creating that sort of daily life ecosystem that we ultimately want to see in our sort of thriving cities. And so we'll be looking at things like public realm enhancements, streetscape upgrades, establishment of new public spaces, and specific development opportunities or policies that sort of institute that sort of neighborhood node concept throughout the downtown environment. The third guiding principle, and one that we're very, very excited about, is all about the river. Downtown historically has turned its back on the river. So many of the developments and lack of developments are along the river's edge, and a lot of that has to do with just the hard infrastructure, the big barriers that exist. And so the team will be looking at how we establish a new sort of front porch mentality for the city. What that means is really capitalizing on a couple of key connections to other open space assets, so that you can imagine a green network that connects from University Lakes or City Brooks Park through downtown, along the riverfront, through Capitol Lake and to the Memorial Park, but also activation along the entire riverfront. We work a lot in river cities around the country and really can tell success stories of cities that have reinvested in their waterfront, really thinking about key gathering spaces, thinking about riverfront experiences. I mean, how amazing would it be that after this event you actually go to a bar or restaurant that's at levee elevation, looking out over the waterfront. There are opportunities for that to exist in Baton Rouge, and there's no reason why the city can't have something like that. The fourth guiding principle of cultural corridors is really centered around connecting incredible cultural assets like the Shaw Center to the state capitol, and really thinking about new ways to tell stories of histories of Baton Rouge. And so this guiding principle really focuses on the idea that 4th Street can become a true sort of civic spine through the city, establishing a relationship with the state capitol all the way to the city facilities around where we are, and looking at new ways to, through art and storytelling and wayfinding, to connect to some of the incredible assets that exist and some of the ideas that have already been thrown out by community groups like the burgeoning Civil Rights Trail. The last guiding principle is around clear connections, and this is really about establishing an identity and a hierarchy for vehicular circulation, how parking works within downtown, how we prioritize multimodal improvements. And so through this process, our team will be looking at strategic streetscape upgrades, new parking management solutions, and ways that we can ensure, to the best of our ability, we can get people riding transit. So imagine connections, stronger connections between things like LSU and downtown, so that we're really relying on all modes and methods to move people through. And so how does all this come together? A downtown plan, as I said, is a very complex process, and as Eric mentioned, we're about halfway through. And this diagram that's on the screen and represented on the big map outside really demonstrates the sort of big, bold, and sort of framework principles all coming together into a redevelopment scheme, new open space, new prioritized corridors. And this is the beginning of the conversation. And so there's still plenty of time for us to gather community input. We actually have an interactive exercise that we'd like to do with you all tonight. And the voice that you provide in this process literally guides how this plan evolves over the next couple of months. And so we're really excited about that. The next part of this is, and I gotta turn around because I don't know exactly what it says, but the next part of this is the interactive exercise. We're gonna have, if you were there last night, I know Dixon, you were there, but if you can get on the Wi-Fi, I'm actually going to pop up a QR code, and we're going to do some live polling before we go into Q&A. But I think they opened up the password, so it's just like Plan Baton Rouge. I'm getting a crick in my neck. Plan Baton Rouge, and then what's the... Yeah, Manship Theatre. So if you can't get Wi-Fi service, you're not going to be able to participate, but that's all right. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to sort of click through the slides, ask the questions, and then we'll have a sort of panel discussion around some of the responses that we get.
Everybody hooked up? Good to go? All right.
Much faster than last night.
What's that?
Much faster than last night.
There you go. So yeah, if you do the QR code, or if you go to menti.com and then type in 11 71 66 14, you'll be able to participate. Everybody good?
Who's in? Everybody in?
It's easier to get this amount of people than 214 doing
Numbers
this.
will stay on top of the screen as we move on.
Chris said it'll stay on the top of the screen as we move on. So let's do this.
Okay, let's jump right in. Scan the code and get logged in. Which neighborhood or area do you live in? Where are you from in town? Tell us what we're looking like, and we're going to see it pop up on the map here.
And you may have to kind of pinch or squeeze away on the outside of the map on your phone. I know I had to do that last night, so just an FYI. You may not get to drill down to your exact street. It's kind of the region that you might be in the city.
You don't want us to know exactly where you're at.
But you should start to see it populated on the screen as you enter.
This is also a test if you know how to read a map.
Different question would be, who knows which way north, south, east, and west are? Because I have a hard time with that myself. Yeah. Okay, this is a pretty good spread. This is, I'm a little surprised actually at what the spread is here around town. Looks like we have just a few more people jumping in.
I love those 5 people who live downtown.
They're very invested in the results of this. Well, as those last few trickle in, so we obviously have a very broad representation in the room tonight that you can see on the map. So this is a planning process about downtown. What does this mean to people who do not live in close proximity here? What does it mean for everybody else? Who wants to take that?
I'll start. I mean, I think, downtowns really are the economic engines of the city, and this should be the heart of the region. This should be where culture happens. This should be where commerce happens. And so, even if you don't live downtown, what is good for downtown is good for the broader region. Downtowns generally have an outsized impact, economic impact from a tax perspective. That's where our state legislature is. I mean, this is where important things happen. And so it is critical for downtown success to happen, and people all around the city should care about what happens in downtown.
Sure. Okay, well said. I know I've seen some things like graphs that show, a chart of tax revenue per acre that show what the outsized impact is of a place like that. It's because of the density, and that is because of intentional planning and well thought out processes. All right, next question. Let's see, which one is this? All right, this is the vibe question. If you were to give downtown a vibe score, with 10 being great vibes and 0 being bad vibes, very bad vibes, what would you score it? Ooh, somewhere in the middle to start. I guess that's how it always works. Now, how we're defining vibes, I guess, is pretty open-ended, but let's see. Smack dab in the middle right now. Just a few more. We need somebody to come in with a 10 and pump these numbers up right here, for Jason's sake.
I'm not voting on this one.
Yeah. All right. Well, at a 4.8, that doesn't look so good on paper. But what does that really mean? And that means we have some work to do. So what does that look like from an opportunity standpoint of how this planning process works? What do we do with this? Where's up from here?
Not surprised that it's about 5. I think that reflects much of what we've seen on the surveys, which, by the way, Josh and his team, they literally read every single survey that you complete, and that's just then put into our kind of our landscape analysis and the feedback from the people. So not too surprising. Also, what's not surprising is because when we have our public events and we get those surveys, people are putting things all over the map about what they want, not necessarily what they don't like, which is not a bad idea, which is not a bad thing. Charles Landry, one of our big developers in the town, says quite often is that the good thing about Baton Rouge, and especially downtown, is that we didn't waste a bunch of money on bad stuff. He may use another word, but he says we didn't waste a bunch of money on bad stuff, which means we don't have to dig ourselves out of a hole that we spent so much of our financial resources to. So it's a lot of opportunity in front of us, which is easier to do than unlocking so many things that we've tied ourselves up to for so many years. So that's, in my perspective, a good thing. We're about halfway of probably where we could be. I'd say I would have been surprised if you would have said 2. Because I do think there's so much activity that we're looking to capitalize on. We spent this day and the last day and yesterday with many stakeholders around the area, investors and developers and restaurant owners and bar owners, and they're telling us about things that they can change right now, way before Plan Baton Rouge III is even completed. So we understand that there are some things that we can do immediately without a plan being done, just cleanliness, maintenance, and safety, things like that, that people value currently in downtown Baton Rouge. So I look at this as opportunity, not as necessarily a reflection on what we haven't done, but what we can do and what's possible.
Yeah, and I'll just build on that. I get it. I look around too. I mean, and you know, I think we've got some work to do just on having civic pride in general in Baton Rouge. I think we visit a lot of cities and we see things have maybe, you know, they've grown in other places. There's energy in other places. There's a lot of vibrancy in downtowns and other places. And we have a lot to grow here in terms of vibrancy downtown. We love to come to the festivals. We love to come to the market. We love to come to very distinct things, but we're seeing pockets of energy happening all over the city. And I think it's time to rethink again. Look, it's been 15 years since we did Plan Baton Rouge II. Yeah, we had COVID in the middle there, and I think, you know, this is the time again to spark that enthusiasm, to spark that excitement, to spark that just, all right, what do you want to see? What needs to be here? How do we start thinking like other cities where we all work together towards beautification, towards cleanliness, towards just quality development? And that's something you can ask for. It's something you can demand. It's something that you need to be focused on. We can have that in Baton Rouge, and we need to ask why aren't we getting it, and how can we get it? And I think this is part of being engaged in this kind of planning effort too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I was in downtown Wichita the other day, and I did not see a single soul on the street, and so at least you're better than Wichita. I'm just kidding, I like Wichita too. No, I mean, to build on what Rachel said, I mean, there is an incredible amount of opportunity, and to get Baton Rouge to feel vibrant, to feel lively, it's not rocket science. I mean, a lot of this has to do with how we attract more people to live downtown, because more people that live downtown means more bodies downtown, means more people patronizing restaurants and retail, which means more businesses want to open up. And so, again, to go back to that sort of ecosystem standpoint, I mean, the point of this master plan is to identify where are the few things that we can sort of insert investment in to really boost that. And so, you know, it's good to see this, that it's not absolute horrible, but we got some work to do, and that's the exciting part about this master planning process.
You know, Adam, I think if you had asked this question 10 years ago, the answer would probably be different.
Because I was going to say something like that.
We were in the midst of so much development happening at one time and coming online, redevelopment of the green spaces and things of that nature. A lot of the festivals, 3rd Street was popping, like there was a lot of activity on 3rd Street. Many of our bars and restaurants were still open, that you would come down on Friday night, Saturday night, start at one end and you'd walk through the other. And you may not even make it to the other end of the street just because there was so much activity. Things plateaued at some point, like they always do when it comes to businesses and trends. I would also say, when you're talking about hubs, you touched on this a little bit about the market diversity and then the hubs. Baton Rouge also has grown, and so that's one of the kind of other sides of the coin of a growing city and a growing region, which is what we are in the capital region. When you start to have development in Mid-City and South Downs and Perkins Road Overpass, and further out in the parish, well, people will be more attracted to what's maybe more closer to them in proximity. And so downtown then competes for that attention as well and those resources. And so we have to recognize that now from a planning side and from you all in the room for your interest on what's next and what is unique about downtown that will pull people here as opposed to what they might do, again, going in Mid-City, going in South Downs, going to Perkins Road, instead of coming downtown, because downtown used to be that spot until a lot of those other places start to say, hey, we have an opportunity to take advantage of it. And so I think the market and the people have reacted to those plans and those trends that have happened over the last 10 or so years.
Sure, the newest, shiniest thing is going to get the attention, right? And this makes me think of another question, but who in here is not from Baton Rouge originally? Raise your hands. Almost everybody, all right. So that means that at the moment in time that you move to town, you know, and what you experience, that's a snapshot you've got for something like this. The vibe that you're going to get is when you're experiencing it. So like you said, the ebb and flow or the highs and lows of what's happening are always changing. We've got to take advantage when we can. All right, let's move on to the next one. Let's see. What are some of your perceptions of downtown today, and what are some things you hear about downtown? This could be a fun one. Is this a word cloud? All right. You know, this is that kind of positivity that we were just talking about. Sleepy, that's a good word.
Hug, when you say sketchy, you mean you're an artist and you're gonna like paint a mural somewhere.
Oh, you know, parking, these planners keep saying that parking is the dirty word, so I don't know how much time we're going to spend on parking, but it's always up there. We'll give it another little bit. Who's missing? Sure, all right. So I'm looking at this list and seeing the big words that are popping up, and this feels very stereotypical to me, right? I would have expected every one of these answers, for the most part, about what the perception is, and we know that perception, you know, is reality when it comes to how's the city talking about what's going on and how we feel about these places. What does this list mean to you guys as you see it from a more analytical point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty typical, and really doesn't surprise me. I think, you know, it's funny to see no parking being the largest one, because if you were to tear down downtown just to build parking, you wouldn't have any reason to drive here in the first place. You know, parking is a hilarious conversation in downtown planning. I can tell you from an analytical and quantitative perspective, there is plenty of parking in downtown. It's just poorly managed, it's poorly signed, it's poorly, you know, sort of arranged. And so, you know, part of this plan is going to be identifying strategies to make sure people have access to parking in the right locations and to get to amenities. The last thing we want to do is start tearing down historic buildings and building more parking lots, because then you're not going to have any reason to come down here, and it's going to be more sketchy, more boring, less restaurants. I mean, a lot of these comments we've seen, especially in recent years, towns that have been hit really hard by COVID. I mean, a lot of restaurants closed, a lot of businesses closed. And so it's important for us to think about what types of investments can be made to get that back going. Because at the end of the day, people want to experience a level of authenticity in cities. They want to have things to do, and so that's why we do these planning efforts. If you sort of say, hey, downtown's like this and there's no reason to invest in it, then it only gets worse, and it starts to have an outsized impact on the broader region. And so this plan is incredibly important to ensure that we're investing the right resources in the right locations so that we can change those sorts of perceptions.
I'm seeing some interesting ones like no night food, I think is a strange way to say it, but that feels like a reality that I've experienced. It's such a small thing, but it really, if that's something you were looking for in that moment, you'd be very disappointed to not have the options for whatever it is on this list that you thought you wanted.
Well, and I was going to say, I think, you know, just the ideas of sleepy or maybe not as much activity going on. I mean, we know from looking at other downtowns, it's a lot of residential units and lots of residents who come and live downtown that activates downtowns. That is something we've done a pretty good job in the last 10 years of converting a lot of office spaces to residential. I know a lot of my colleagues live downtown and love it, but we've got to do a lot more. And when we were seeking consultants for this plan, that was one of the key elements that we really wanted to look for, is someone who had experience in the kinds of incentives and tools that make it easy for developers to build not just housing, but affordable housing. I see expensive up there too. I understand. I mean, we do have residential, and it may not be affordable to when you're just starting out. So how do we get units that are built, quality housing that you want to live in and that you can afford? And I think other cities have really created great tools that attract developers, that attract that kind of development. And that's the work we need to do. It's going to require regulatory action. It's going to require unique financing tools. It's going to require just a lot of, changes in the way that we think about providing incentives. So I'm looking forward to that part of it. I think it's going to really create a lot of new opportunities for new residential downtown.
Yeah, I think what Rachel said is it's a great point, because when you actually look at the numbers, leasing in downtown is incredibly high. And so from a demand perspective, there actually is a lot of demand for housing. There's actually a lack of supply. And so it's an interesting sort of dilemma, and a lot of that has to do with the financial incentive tools that can be expanded to help developers. And that's not something that is unique to Baton Rouge. A lot of downtowns struggle with that. And so this plan will definitely speak to that sort of condition.
All right, let's go to the next one. What would make you choose downtown as a place to live? So we kind of talked about perceptions, observations currently, but what would get you to consider it? More housing? I live here now. Okay, congratulations. Let's see. More food and beverage, more better parks and open space, better multimodal connectivity. Other. More housing, more housing, more housing. Y'all are right on track. Better technology. Better Wi-Fi. Well, so housing is creeping up on this one as the lead. Anybody out there? What's an other? Anybody have an other?
No, I did not. I said you should ask what the other.
Yeah, what's an other? Somebody shout one out. Entertainment. Accessibility. What else?
Traffic.
Traffic.
You want more traffic? That's actually good. There's a direct correlation between traffic jams and economic activity, and so that would be awesome, right?
All right, we're done here. Okay. Well, how do you guys want to take this? It's kind of a spread. You talked a little bit about housing. What else do you take away from this?
Yeah, I mean, I think. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the housing is certainly not surprising. Downtown Development District did a survey of some state office workers a few years ago, asking them what would it take for them to live downtown, but also if they could live downtown, would they? And I think 40 or so, almost 50% of them said yes, if there was like affordable options. And I think we were having this conversation earlier, Marley, if you're out there, kind of hard to see in this light over here, about kind of that missing middle types of housing options. There's affordable housing options as well, and then there's some on the high end. But what about that middle income range? And many of these state office workers, people that work for the city parish, and probably a lot of young professionals in the room are probably in that range. And so what types of other housing developments or incentives that are there for that class that, that really helps to build up and help downtowns thrive? And so not too surprising on that end. I think what we'll start drilling down when we get to the specific projects and the strategies around those is what exactly does accessibility mean? What exactly type of housing are you looking for? Entertainment. What type of entertainment? Because that can be all over the map. What are the things that would attract you here? And we can get down to real specifics, because on the other side of the planning efforts is the programming side of things. And that's not always something that we discuss in our meetings. A lot of it's talking about like actual physical structural things that need to be done, but none of this can be done without the activation. And that's what Rachel was talking about earlier in Forum's role over the years by Reindeer Run and Art Melt and Art Hop and the Manship Theatre and the Shaw Center, of all these arts and culture related activities that draw people down here as a destination. What more or what other things can be done? And that really depends on what your interests are. And not something that these institutions are going to do and just hope people show up. You actually have to patronize them, but also tell them what you want to spend your dollars on, because most of us are spending our money somewhere, it just may not be in downtown right now. And I think that's the important part to uncover.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a great part of planning is the programming too. I think another big piece of planning is data. It's going to be extremely valuable to have the data that the team is compiling. And the reason is because developers like certainty, businesses like certainty. They want to know what's the marketplace. So not here today is the James Lima team, that's the market analysis team, that's part of the Sasaki team. And that data is something that in Plan Baton Rouge 1 and 2 was used again and again to package projects. To make the case for federal money, to make the case for state legislative support if that was needed. There are going to be gaps when it comes to big ideas and big projects. There's going to be funding sources that come from a variety of places. And the case has to be made again and again. Why this project? Why now? And data can help with that, along with your support can help with that. I go back to that. Your voice, your champion of those kind of projects can make a big difference. But that's going to be a valuable outcome. We haven't compiled all of that kind of focused data in one place in a long time. So that's going to be something that I think will have a real impact out of this plan.
Well, and, data has a lot to do with perceptions too. And for some of the perceptions we talked about already, how do we clear the air on some things that just simply aren't true? Maybe it's about parking or the statistics of crime or anything like that, the hot topics that everybody usually touches on. There are data points and there are thousands of examples from all over the country that should make the case a little easier, but sharing those and disseminating those is a part of the process too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd just say storytelling is everything in this, and part of our team's job is communicating that vision, and a lot of that has to do with pointing to examples, pointing to data points to say not only what the existing conditions are, but what is the economic or social or environmental impact of the plan proposed.
All right. Well, and kind of with that in mind, as you compare to other places, what is one thing you've seen in another city that you wish we had here? Better. Well, we're working on that. Better. Just better. That's it. Sports teams, late night activity, low cost activities. Walkability is popping up to the top. Waterfront like Knoxville, that's good and specific. Major sports league, baseball. So we've got quite a few sports mentions. Ooh, this one's getting big. Walkability is maintaining the lead, so that's pretty clear. What does that mean to you guys? I mean, that is a buzzword of all buzzwords when it comes to this.
I know we're going to get into Q&A. If you don't mind, I'd like to start asking some questions now, because I want to hear from everybody else, because they're the ones responding to the questions. So we might get lift the lights up in the house here in a second. Steven, or whoever's controlling. There we go. So, walkability, what does that mean? I think downtown is fairly easily accessible to walk. Now, I know we've got some ADA compliance things that we're working on as a city, but it is hot as hell. And right now, outside of the rain and flooding on some streets, it is hard to walk a few blocks, especially if you're wearing a blazer like I am throughout most of the days. But I want to hear from you all who are putting walkability as that. What does that mean to you? Like specifically, if you don't mind just shouting it out. Yeah, Rachel.
I would say,
And speak it loud if you can.
I would say, I don't know if y'all can hear me, that for parades, like the Spanish Town Parade, I have walked by myself, and I don't recommend that because it's not safe, from Spanish Town Road Uber walker, I can get myself to the parade, but I can't get myself somewhere where I can call an Uber to take myself back and walk. And I would say, because I brought the Ubers up to several people in here earlier, is that, you would hopefully decrease the amount of drunk drivers coming to the parade, and then you would also have a suitable way for women to get safely back to one A to one B.
So ultimately, along with the safety as well.
Have the Ubers in place as close to Spanish.
Gotcha.
Walk, like I said.
So I guess that's really multimodal is kind of that topic, right?
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that. There's in bigger cities like Denver, you've got designated airports and designated ride share. That facilitates what Rick was talking about, getting out into and out of downtown. Because walkability is great. Juliet just pointed out, hey, how is downtown not walkable? Because it really is, but you have to drive here to walk. And vice versa to get back out. So the multimodal transportation, boat transit, the greenways, and then a way to ride your electric bike from LSU to here, from government to here. We really have to take away for those things to be easier and safer, separate from cars. And then you have a train, some sort of little train that gets you from one side of downtown to the other, and then you get out. So it's multimodal.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And yes, in the back. Or you? Yes, it's all right.
I mean, I walk to work, I live downtown, and a little bit more direct, but there's like a rusty fence hanging over the sidewalk, so it's just not ideal.
Did you put rusty fence removal?
I think part of the walkability issue is the dead spots, where it's like you're at a great spot and you know there's another good spot over here. But in between that, to kind of the safety concern, at some point in that point, you start to kind of feel a little scared. I mean, not me personally, you're
You're never scared, of course. Just walk with Jonathan and you'll be fine.
Speaking for a friend.
Leave me in a parking lot. I'm really when you walk around, I think that is kind of the part of, it's not that far away. And being in the deep south, we all know it's kind of checkerboard, and it can be in downtown, it's a little more so.
I think that the map and what they're showing on some of the plans is exactly that, is to connect the dots of some of these little hubs that are already kind of there.
Yep.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I actually work downtown too, and I do feel like, I agree with everyone else saying, but I feel like walkability, I also feel like there are a lot of walkable spots, like the levees, some areas downtown, but I feel like you're either really close to the train tracks, and you never know when the train's gonna come, or you're by like a busy road, and I feel like just kind of connecting those pieces where you feel safe everywhere walking is a big part, like rather than being next to a busy highway, or the train is like my thing with the levee. So I just feel like, I know it's hard to find ways to connect all that, but that's what I think about when I think about walkability, is those areas.
Thanks. Yeah. Any question?
Piggybacking off what you said, with the dead spots, right? So in very tiny print there, like the multimodal transportation, yes, but multi-use real estate. When they built I'll say buildings, like if you go north of North Street, or is that North Boulevard or whatever?
Street, yeah.
Yeah, North Street. Yeah, it's all single use, and it's dead until 8:30 in the morning, and it's dead after 4:30. And that's.
Yeah. Large pieces
You
of
have giant
downtown.
islands of barren, I went to the first few CFEX, Smart Growth Summits and stuff like that. So, Jane Jacobs, the Deaf and Light of Great American Cities, you have to have something happening all the time, so there's somebody else watching the streets and still safe that building.
Yeah.
Multi-use calls all the time.
Yeah, I'm trying to swing around the room. I see my man in the back. You raise your hand?
Yeah, so I understand from a development standpoint, Baton Rouge downtown is kind of complicated.
And speak up if you can.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I understand downtown Baton Rouge is complicated from a development standpoint because we went from river out instead of where most cities is central out. From a walkability standpoint, one of the biggest things downtown faces is lighting. There's not a lot of lighting in specific areas, particularly around areas that are more blighted, I guess you could say. So y'all looked into and or created a solution for that.
That's good to hear. It's come up quite a bit. I know in the DDD is currently working with the city parish on lighting in areas too. They've done it on 3rd Street, but now they're starting to look at other areas as well. So that is an important piece of that.
I know Chief Morse, we met with him the other day, talked about some of the specific lighting plans that are happening already in, for safety and crime-related areas. Adding lights in specific target spots is a very particular effort too.
We have some more hands, and yep, let's go back and then we'll come to the front. Sorry. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, I work downtown. I actually work in the building at the LSU Museum. I came to Baton Rouge in 2007 in college. I went to Southern. One thing I noticed that's different now than it was then was the nightlife was more brilliant. At that point, you could come downtown and go to 4, 5, 6 different spots in one night and have a full night out in Baton Rouge, and you go home and have, just sleep it off and be fine. But now there's a couple of spots that are open late, and one thing I noticed that there was a lack of then, and that certainly there's a lack of now, is public transportation that funnels to downtown. Specifically from Southern, there was a line, I'm not too sure how it functions now, from LSU, but I feel like there should be some sort of CATS route that can go from Southern to downtown, LSU to downtown, from Southern to LSU, because it's just a straight shot from the road both directions. So I feel like that would be something that would help bring more liveliness and more youth into the downtown area.
And we'll come back to you, Rachel. Go ahead. What question?
My issue with the current walkability is there's just so much concrete. I understand you have to have concrete to walk, but there's hardly any trees or grass. It's just not pretty to walk, so it's not really conducive to wanting to walk down.
Yeah. And Brett, we're gonna circle back around. I'm trying. This light is shining in my face. It's hard to see the hands. So yeah, we're gonna come back. I'm trying to scan around.
Also, on the lighting issue here, is that there's a place on 860 St. Louis Street called George's. They need more lighting in their parking lot and around the building, because it's a little itty bitty building. It's over there right across the street from the Spencer Callahan Law Office. And there's no street lights, there's no lighting in the parking lot. I would like to see that area be a little more.
Yeah, more well lit.
Okay, there's a place here, it needs to be visible, so it's not, violence kind of do that. Just present with this city. It's a gay bar, and I would like to see it more.
Sure. So we got a couple more. I think it's one on the side here. Did you have a question? Yes.
Okay, so I'm thinking about this from a consulting.
And speak up if you can. I'm sorry.
So I'm thinking about this from a consulting perspective and how you put these hot spots throughout the city as like identifiers of different communities throughout it. And I may be completely off base with everyone else in the room, but I'd like to see the hub of downtown being the 25, 30-year-old range spots. And as much as I love my LSU students and Southern University students, I do believe there's hubs that cater to LSU students and cater to I do want to see more development around Southern. But this hub seems to have an identity of this 25 to 40-year-old realm, the realm that actually is represented within Forum 225. So how can we, because you have graduate students at LSU and Southern, you have 2 law schools that are catering to this 25+ range. How can we continue to maintain that identity downtown where there is this buffer to where these grad students, these younger professors and scholars are coming into the city, these business folks who are flying into DTR, have a place where they're not commingling with these students that kind of have a different desire of what their social activities look like, and especially when we're considering crime or just like lollygagging.
Sure. Thank you. No, that's important to hear, especially considering the age group of probably many of the people in this room. So yeah, no, that's important.
So we don't need another Tigerland downtown. We've got Tigerland, and there's a different vibe.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. I mean, if you look at the demographics of like powerhouse downtown economies right now, like Austin, for example, like the demographic that you just described is the overwhelming demographic in downtown housing. I will say though that like it is really important for you to have a very broad spectrum of housing, because all of those individuals, they graduate between those houses. They all have different needs from an activation and ground floor use perspective, and it goes back to this concept of like the feedback loop. It's like people want to live where there is authenticity, where there is business, where there are other people, and in order to do that, you've got to have everything. And so I would argue that we need more student housing downtown, because more student housing will actually beget more younger professional housing. I would say we actually need more empty nesters living downtown, because they have much bigger pocketbooks and they spend money in businesses, and businesses follow empty nesters, which then young people want to live next to. And so, the housing makeup that we want to attract here is as broad of a spectrum as we can possibly get, because that adds to activation, which adds to safety, which adds to vibrancy.
And another comment question, and I know we're going, because we're running probably about 15 minutes or so, but if we want to get another comment, and then we'll probably start getting to the wrap up. Huh?
Let's catch the last question. We got one more. We got one more.
Okay. Sorry.
All right, if you had a magic wand, you'd make downtown more what? Walkable. Brighter. This little dot system's a little harder to follow than the other ones. Let's see. More green, trees planted, shade, welcoming, more for more people, alive, people all around, affordable, living and things to do. Green, 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 green is taking the lead. Well, this is kind of following along with the conversation so far on these hot spots. What do you think? Where does that take us next? Or can you translate a little bit more of the plan or the comments and the feedback so far as it relates to some of this?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that the plan is going to tackle a lot of these issues, and really all of these issues. And I mean, it's not to say that there's not going to, we don't have a magic wand, and tomorrow is not going to automatically make Baton Rouge everything you want it to be. But to Rachel's points earlier about, what processes like this mean for the future, big things and small things result from processes like this. And believe it or not, like our team literally takes this feedback and we will make recommendations around specific projects, specific policies, specific programming, specific partnerships that will ultimately make downtown a better environment. Each one of these topics can relate to something that this plan is going to talk about, and that's, I think, very exciting for this group to be a part of. And I think the call to action that Rachel had earlier about getting more involved, because the planning process is going to end and there's going to be some sort of report and vision, but that's where the hard work begins in implementation. And I would say that there's going to be a space for anybody in this room to find something related to downtown success, grab onto it, and be a champion for it.
Yeah, that's a part of what I would recommend as well. We mentioned John Jackson earlier, who also started Launch Media and then Creative Block. He always had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. But just do. If there are things that you don't see, there's activations and things that you can create along with your friend groups that start that momentum, that become a thing. And that's, as Rachel mentioned, when it was just Art Hop and then it became Art Melt, it was like they found an old building. Again, it was, what is Blend now used to just be an old building, right? And they just hung art on the wall, invited friends, had some wine or beer or whatever, and like, this was an art event. And at the time, this was something that was new and different to downtown Baton Rouge that a lot of young folks gravitated to, and then that became a huge event. And so think of those ways, because a lot of us, even on the planning side of things, may not be in your shoes, or we're not in your shoes and not thinking the way that you are. And so it starts with you just deciding, like, screw it. We're just going to do it ourselves, and then we'll hope that everyone else catches on. That's, I think, a big part of what we're asking you to participate in. Not only just doing the survey part and providing your perspectives, but there's also a doing part of the implementation that's going to be extremely critical for the success of this project.
Yeah, y'all come plant some trees in the dark.
All right, we've got time for, let's just do a few questions. Any open Q&A if you have for the Sasaki team or the Plan team here? Taylor?
Hey, I'm curious how you're thinking about the connectivity with other centers around Baton Rouge. I think of Mid-City, which is close geographically, doesn't feel very connected, or LSU, which is close geographically, there's some disconnect there. How do you think about how people move between those two spaces? Does it matter at all? Do you do more or less?
Yeah, you gotta do more. I mean, we literally were talking about mid-city connections today. You know, a couple of years ago, there was a road diet on mid-city that literally stopped right at the edge of downtown. There's no reason why some of that improvement can't continue into downtown and really connect, see Government Street as not just, you know, a car entrance into downtown, but a continuation of that commercial corridor that's been so successful in mid-city into downtown. You know, the Nicholson connection between downtown and LSU is absolutely critical. Investing, you know, that corridor is really probably the one place in Baton Rouge where transit would actually be immediately successful. There's enough density on either side for people to get on a shuttle or a BRT and ride back and forth. And so looking at, you know, potentially densifying in the southern part of downtown, particularly for that reason. And so I would say that this plan is acutely addressing those sorts of ideas.
Start over here and we'll circle back.
We had a slide that had, I believe there are 4 pictures, and one of them said San Pedro, so that inspired me this question. What are the comparable cities that you have looked at in terms of evaluating what opportunities are available?
Comparable cities.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we looked at a few sort of what I would call like peer cities, state capitals roughly around the same population size, you know, like Little Rock, for example, or Raleigh, to use those as like examples of, hey, like what are some of the demographics that we see in those and how do those compare? But I would say that there's aspirational cities that you can look to across for any number of reasons, big and small. You know, we talked yesterday at a meeting about some of our work in Chicago that we've done along the Riverwalk, which was a huge public realm investment that literally paid for itself in half the time that was projected to pay for itself. And so that specific thing relates to riverfront conversations that we've had here. So it's less about like, hey, we want to be exactly like Knoxville, or hey, we want to be exactly like Atlanta, or hey, we want to be exactly like Austin, but really understanding what is authentic about Baton Rouge, what are the good things that we can cling on to, and then learning individual lessons about specific ideas that have come up.
Yep. Y'all can decide who goes first.
Just duke it out.
Something that I always think about a lot in Baton Rouge is the homeless population. Not in the sense of like they scare me and they need to go away, but like outside of my apartment, there are people who are dying of exposure all the time, and that's intolerable. It's immoral, it's intolerable, and we have a duty to fix that. I mean, we can be judged by how we treat the least among us. And before we do anything, this is going to cause other people all over downtown. And those people, if they're not addressed and they're not helped, because the majority of them are probably mentally ill, they need help. And before we do anything, we need to help those people. And they can't just be shunted aside or discriminated even worse, because at least they're sheltered. They have to go up north, they're going to run out the plants. They go anywhere else, they're going to the single family neighborhood. There's nowhere else for them to go. And so they need to be taken care of. Really taken care of, not just.
I agree, and I think, Josh, you said this probably early on we had that any growing city is facing that issue across the country. I do know the mayor's office, and not to speak on behalf of the city parish, is focused on that issue with a number of nonprofits area and some religious organizations too. I'm not sure exactly where they are on that plan, but I know one of the guys did speak at our Downtown Development District Commission meeting just a month or so ago. So there is something in the works. But as downtowns and cities grow, you start to see that happening more and more so. But I agree 100% with you on that.
I mean, we still have to ameliorate it. I mean, even if it's a natural consequence, it still has to be ameliorated.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
No, yeah, I was just wondering more so, what is the funding process? I know we're not in the total planning phase yet to the end of the year, but is it gonna be a combination of municipal bonds, taxpayer money, and then what is the projected pool of money that we have to fund the type of initiatives that we want to take on?
Yeah, I'll start by saying it's any and everything. I mean, plans like this, you know, again, this is not a plan that you sort of say, okay, this is exactly this amount of money, and we're going to do it in 5 years. I mean, there's a whole process of sort of saying this kind of project is good for these types of financial tools. And that could be public-private partnerships, that could be innovative taxing strategies that tap into resources that already exist without raising taxes. There's lots of creative financing mechanisms that have been used. You know, I just mentioned the Chicago River Walk. The capital stack for that project used 3 or 4, maybe 5 different funding sources. One of those was what's called a TIFIA loan. It's a federal loan program that is then paid back to the federal government through business revenue that's generated within a buffer distance. And so those types of innovative sort of funding strategies are exactly the kind of things that we need to think about across the broad spectrum. The goal, though, and I think I said this to an NPR reporter last night, but the goal of any planning process should not be how much it costs, but what is the actual economic return that we're talking about. Because the goal of a plan like this should actually be to make money, not to just spend money. And the reality is if you invest in the right locations, you can expect a return on investment for any of these types of improvements.
I think that if there's maybe a young perspective on this, is that young folks want to see the reality of the math. They want to know that they want data. They don't want it to be ambiguous, and that, you know, maybe not so long ago some of the results of these things kind of always felt that way, but that we really care to pay attention to the details. And I'm afraid raising our Form 225 dues is not going to quite cover it. So we're open to suggestions.
It's going to raise the dues, and that's what's going to pay.
That's like, not enough. Yeah.
Well, and
All right,
I
we
think,
got time.
I think that the stat is that there's been over $2 billion in private and public investment over the last 20 years, almost $3 billion. Is that okay? That you would know from the DDD, and that's a great measure of return on investment.
All right, I think we got time for one more. Last question.
Have you seen any correlation between, so like the homeless problem and all these sort of things, like in your other cities that you've worked in, have you seen any correlation with change in public policy, like ranked choice voting, that helps you get past the red, blue, either or, all the way, new way deadlock? Have you seen anything like that?
Those are incredibly tough.
That's a great question.
I don't know.
Feel free to. I mean, it's other cities if you see it, but you haven't.
I mean, you're talking specifically, like, are you talking about election, like local elections?
Yeah, right. So we're just to go on the homeless example, right? Like, sorry, folks, Bobby General came in and across the board cut public health and human services,
Sure.
and that's a huge turn of a bunch of homeless people from the mental institutions out on the streets. There's this is a national problem, but every city's a microcosm of it, right? So if you have a red, blue deadlock, it's just a battle of I'm not you, you're not me, and what slugger carries the day versus hey, here's a third way. If we don't have an option to break the deadlock, then nothing will ever change. I mean, I was here when the Austin 6, way back in the day, from comparable cities, Austin, Texas was comparable to us. They've grown a ton. We're still here. We've gotten worse. This gentleman over here didn't notice that there's less than like now than there was in 2007. So, yeah.
I mean, again, I honestly don't know an answer of whether ranked choice voting or specific voting patterns influence homeless populations. But I will say, I mean, the homelessness is something that is seen in red and blue states all across the country. Baton Rouge is not unique in terms of having homeless population issues. I think this gentleman, brings up a great point that, like, yeah, it's a moral obligation that has to be addressed in terms of making sure people aren't dying on the street. 100% hard stop. In terms of the realities of like the population of homeless folks in downtown as it relates on like a per capita basis, Baton Rouge is actually not, if you look across the country, it's not like statistically higher, it's actually statistically lower than a lot of places. And so the reality of that is a perception thing. If you're walking down the street and there's only 3 people there and 2 of them are homeless, you're going to think that there's a homelessness issue. If you're walking down the street and there's 100 people there and 3 of them are homeless, you're not going to think there's a homelessness issue. And so a lot of the challenges around homelessness as a sort of perceptional problem and a safety problem in downtown relates to vibrancy and activation. And I know it's hard to hear that, but that's the hard truth, is that in any downtown environment, in any urban environment across North America, there are homeless people, period. In the cities where you walk through and you're like, oh, the reality is you're just seeing a lot more people. And so I'm not saying that we should not, that those issues should not be addressed and that they shouldn't have real, efforts to, put people in housing, to provide affordable housing, all of those solutions, yes, yes, yes. But from a perceptional perspective, and I think what a lot of the suggestions in this plan and things that have been done in previous plans and things that we recommend in other cities is about how do we ensure that there are vibrancy in locations so that when somebody, a single woman is walking from one place to another, they don't feel unsafe because it's vibrant. There's other people.
Thank you. Thanks for that. That's a tough question. Way to finish this out strong. I guess that's it. What do we need to know next? What do people need to do going forward to keep participating in the plan?
If I've said it once, I'll say it again. Go to planbatonrouge.com, fill out the survey, but also share the survey with your network, people in your organizations, your family, and not just people who live downtown or come downtown for work, but people who come downtown every now and then, whether it's for, Live After 5 or the Blues Festival or some arts-related events, or coming to the Manship Theatre for plenty of the shows that Jason and his team are hosting here every single week. Share this, because this is what we want to hear from people across the region. Also, stay involved throughout this process, show up, use your voice. What you provided to us tonight is critical throughout this, because we did hear things tonight in this room that we haven't heard yet. I think there's probably a little bit more of a negative perception of this room that was shared tonight in this room of downtown that we've heard, and that's okay, because a lot of people say things that never come downtown. Many of you are here tonight, so you've actually shown that you're willing to come downtown on a rainy, stormy Thursday night, and that's important. So what you're saying is drawing you here or not bringing you here is extremely important, and that's what we want to continue to hear throughout this process. Josh can talk a little bit more about the next step that we're going to have in this process and how, I think your role will play even more importantly there.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate, stay involved. As Eric said at the very beginning, we're halfway through this process. All of the feedback that we got last night, tonight, through our online survey, through the wealth of stakeholder conversations that we've had, means that the diagram that you saw changes, it morphs, it shrinks, it gets different ideas. And then from here, we are really focused on the details. So identifying the funding sources, identifying the specific policy strategies, identifying the specific streets where trees need to be. All of those sorts of, that level of specificity, that's what the next 6 months looks like. And so getting the word, getting your voice into this plan now means that it will ultimately be reflected. And so I think, yep, there's the QR code. Again, we're gonna have a website. We've got all of the information that's on the boards presented. All of that is available on there. So if you want to share it with a friend, family, coworkers, that's your one-stop shop for everything. And then the survey, as I said, we really do read every single thing that comes through, and so we highly, highly encourage you all to do that. And last night I asked the 200 some odd, or 300 some odd people that were in the room that they had to give it to 3 people, and so, how many people, we had 47 people?
40 something, yeah.
47 people here today. I expect that there will be 3 times 47, or I guess that would be 4 times 47, survey respondents by tomorrow morning, so that's your homework.
All right, we'll take care of that. We're right on that. All right.
And I just want to say thank y'all again for showing up. This is a big part of the process. I am going to have to rush the consultant team across town to another engagement, their last of this 2-day, 48-hour adventure that they've been on since they've been on the ground. So we may not get a chance to talk a little bit more right afterwards, but you can get in touch with Adam. He can forward the contact information to us if there's other questions, comments. Other times we need to get in front of you or your respective groups. We'd love to do that as well. So I didn't want to be rude as we're running out of the Manship Theatre here and hopping in a car because I have to get them across town. But thank you again for showing up.
Thanks everybody. We're gonna hang out.